Welcome to another episode of Wits and Weights. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Louise Valentine to talk about how to achieve sustainable fitness goals by doing less rather than more, how to work with our physiology and not against it, how to optimize health for women 35 and older, and actionable tips you can start applying right away to unlock your best health despite age, a busy life, or obstacles. Louise is a physiologist, best-selling author, avid runner, and military spouse. She was named #1 health specialist in the US, has worked for the NFL, and published research on how to solve the root cause of health and fitness problems. She's now CEO of breakingthroughwellness.com, where she offers one-on-one coaching, courses, and the groundbreaking Badass Breakthrough Academy for women runners and fitness lovers age 35 and beyond. Louise, thanks for joining me on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so am I. So to start off, can you just tell us a little bit about your background as it relates to your diagnoses, your health diagnoses, and then what you call turning breakdowns into breakthroughs?
Yeah, at a young age, I got this message that I wasn't built to be a runner. I had such a strong genetic history of all these health diagnoses that would ultimately be my fate. And this motivated at a very young age. I was really interested in health and fitness. I got multiple degrees in exercise science, physiology, and I wanted to arm myself with these tools and strategies so that that wouldn't be the case, that I would be healthy and resilient. And I had this motivation. I tell this story of turning the treadmill up to like a 10% grade and, power walking in the 6th grade saying, that won't be my story. But, ultimately I did end up getting some health diagnoses. I did struggle with compromised immune system, infertility, hormonal issues, and ultimately did get diagnoses of both osteoporosis and a stomach precancer in my 30s. So I did have those moments where even having knowledge and tools and degrees, I still felt like it was a breakdown moment. And I stand here as living proof, though, that despite what doctors say, they told me it was impossible to reverse things. Despite what I was told in my youth, that I was able to turn those breakdowns into breakthroughs and reverse what I was told would be chronic conditions.
So, I mean, in your 30s, you got all of this bad news, I guess, surprise at that age, especially things like osteoporosis. How did it make you feel? I mean, where did it take you at that point?
Yeah, it was incredible darkness. I kind of described to those that I work with now that, we can shift our perspective that health and performance is fluid. It's always dynamic. It's going to have moments that are hard. It's just knowing what to do and what to say to ourselves when it gets hard that matters. So now that I've been there in those dark moments, I do have a lot of different tools and strategies to help others work through these moments. But it's okay to sit there for a moment and just kind of to feel it, though. And it is ugly, and to be mad and frustrated and let that ugly out too.
So it was your crucible moment. I mean, it sounds like, are you thankful that happened in hindsight?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I even say like the struggles of being a military spouse, the struggles in my health challenge, I believe I was given them for a purpose so that I would see how strong you can be and despite these crazy obstacles, so that my struggle can be someone's inspiration ultimately.
That's amazing. And I'm assuming this led to a lot of the things that you accomplished later on that we talked about in the intro. One of those is publishing research. We're big into science and talking about evidence on this podcast. And you talk about solving the root cause of health and fitness problems. So can you just expound on that a bit, on the research and what you discovered?
Yeah, so I did look at a lot of things like childhood obesity, looking at women's health issues in my master's program, sedentary and things like that, on our health and longevity. But ultimately, my research fellowship was with the US Army. So I was able to look at health outcomes all the way from chronic disease to mental health, look at the impact of physical activity, sleep, nutrition on our well-being, on our health. And the military is always a wonderful population to study because their circumstances are fairly controlled. They do a lot of the same exercises. They may be in the same type of an environment in the field. They might be getting the same meals in their prepackaged meals. So a lot of times we learn a lot about the human body and human performance by studying the military.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the validity of a study is often dependent on the sample and who's involved and how consistent it is. But so I want to dig a little deeper on that. The root cause, like I want to know the secret, right? What is the root cause of health and fitness problems? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so it was looking more so at the fact that it is always individual. We would look at the different troops, and different troops would have different problems. Like for some, obesity was their challenge. For some, it was mental health outcomes. For others, it was injury. We looked at different impacts of in the individual troops, that each one would have a different health outcome that was their problem point. So it was then looking at targeted interventions for those specific priority issues, because you can sit there, you're going to try and have programs for everything, but it's really defining that number one trouble point and starting there and aligning those resources accordingly. So rather than trying to do everything at once, which I see a lot with those that I work with in their health and fitness, it's having that, okay, what is your priority goal? And how can we be most effective in moving the needle to achieve that goal? Not everything all at once.
Yeah. No, I love that approach. And I know you're a one-on-one coach, just like I am. And you probably, every single client that comes in has their unique big rock or big priority that they struggle with. And the next client is perfectly skillful in that area and has something else, right?
Yes.
So did you find common themes, like things like specific types of biofeedback that you could bucketize or categorize across anybody?
Well, I think we looked at like the foundation of health. If you don't have health, you will not perform.
Mhm.
So looking at things like mental health and then also sleep. So having like that absolute foundation, without certain things, you will not be able to improve your fitness. You will not be energized to perform at your best, whether it's your career, whether it's the military. So what is that health foundation, and do you have it in place?
Okay, sleep. You hit a trigger with me. Sleep is a challenge for a lot of people. I agree, whether it's quantity, quality. And I know a lot of my listeners are busy professionals. They have families, they have career obligations. And this idea of, I know you mentioned doing less, doing less, not more, I think resonates with people who are overwhelmed, and things like sleep come into the equation. So tell me a little bit about that concept of less versus more and how it plays into sustainable success.
Yeah, I think it's really important to look at your priority goals in your health and fitness, and then start to inventory the different things that you're doing. And it's so easy with the noise out there to want to buy like the greatest supplement solution. I see that, all the time. And it's
Mhm.
almost like a backpack. Your game plan is a backpack, and you're just stuffing so many things in it to try and gain the edge, losing the sight of the things that could actually move the needle, and just like taking
Mhm.
that focused action, and you'd be leaps and bounds ahead. So I'll use the example of, I trained a lot of runners, and something I might see with a busy mom who's trying to run her best. She has career goals. She's got kids in soccer. She's running around like a crazy person. So with that stress, she thinks, okay, yoga is good for runners. So I'm going to make sure that I do yoga. I'm going to add that into marathon training on top of this crazy season of life. And so I'll stop and I'll say, okay, so are you driving to your yoga class? Yes, she's driving to it. It's an hour. Well, why are you doing yoga? Well, I'm doing yoga because I have, this injury. I just want to make sure. I just want to prevent injury in my running. I'd be like, what if I told you, unless you're using that yoga for like mental health and you absolutely love it, we could give you like 2 targeted strength exercises that you could do at
Mhm.
home,
Do it home. Yeah.
and it would be more effective and target your problem area. And we can maybe remove yoga until after marathon training, because it takes so much time and energy
Yeah,
to
which is
run
an
in the
extra
first
stressor.
place.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, no, that's so true. With prioritization, you see that all the time. You mentioned supplements, right? The pyramid of nutrition, where people just need to focus maybe on protein, and they get in the weeds with whatever it might be, clean eating or something else. So regarding sleep, so if we dig in a little bit more about sleep, how big of a problem is that for people? How many people does that affect that you encounter? And what would you say are some effective strategies for that?
Yeah, I'll see a lot of women that struggle a lot with sleep. And even like I remember I had a male triathlete who was struggling with it as well. There's different strategies, and actually where I actually pull it for some of the research with the US military, this concept of sleep banking. So
Okay.
if they have an event coming up, the US military, they will add just a little bit more sleep to encourage the soldier, or in this specific study, getting extra hours of sleep. And if you do that, just a few, say it's like 10 or 10 minutes of sleep, 10 minutes of sleep, 5 days a week leading up to the event, you're still banking sleep prior to that event. So what I like to do is I like to encourage those that I work with to look to these events that they have. Is it a high stress work week? Can we sleep bank? Is it an event like a marathon where you know you're going to get up at 3 a.m. to make a bus to get to the start line by 5? Let's sleep bank. And then, of course, looking at different things that influence sleep, like caffeine. Cutting caffeine off is huge. By like noon, can we just cut it off by
Yeah,
noon, maybe?
long half-life there, yeah. Yeah, I like that idea
Exactly.
of sleep banking, then that's adding 10 minutes each day leading up to the event.
Yeah, and if they have more
Okay.
time, of course, let's
Yeah,
do
sure.
20 minutes. Um, but typically, we're not hitting that like 8 to 9 hour optimal sleep range. For some ultra endurance athletes, we're looking at 10 hours as recommendations. But if we drop below 6, that's the cut point where you're seeing compromised immunity, 5 times more likely to get injury, I think is a
Yeah,
statistic there. It's just insane what that
it's
does to our
insane, yeah.
physiology.
So the sleep banking is kinda like carb loading, which these athletes I imagine have to do as well. So you're saying get more Tom Brady level of sleep and, less
Yeah.
of, yeah, 3-shift worker level of sleep. Um, so I guess related to that then, so we talked about, people working from home, talked about sleep. Uh, People are sitting around all day too. Like I've heard the phrase sitting is the new smoking, and you're working all these hours. I mean, I'm working from home. We get burned out by stress. We have a tendency to even do more in that case because we're not taking the chance to get in a car and go to our workplace. Do you have any actionable tips for those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one of the best things we can do is like sit on a ball that will just activate our core all day. And I'll tell you, I've even seen the difference in my own core from when we moved here to Delaware. I would sit on the couch and work because it was so comfortable. I had this big, beautiful window I could look out at. I was like, I love it here. Well, I stopped sitting on my ball chair and I saw fat accumulate on my stomach. And I was like, well, that's okay. So that's just me. But if we're looking at bigger pictures, like having this ball works your core. But if you don't like that idea, a sit stand desk, alternate
Yep.
between the two. And I think the biggest game changer that I've seen in the research is just moving at least 2 minutes after you eat, whether it's a
Okay.
snack, whether it's a meal.
I like that. Okay, and you're on the ball right now.
I am, as you can tell, I'm like bouncing
Okay,
around.
yeah,
Yeah.
I can tell, that's good.
Yeah.
What about standing all day? Because I have a treadmill desk and I tend to not sit. Is that a problem?
So if you don't have back issues as a byproduct of that, I do
Interesting.
see a lot of people that stand too much. And for example, my husband, he's an ultra runner, and he was standing because he's like, yes, I'm tough. I'm going to stand all day. And he ended up having some back pain. I said, why don't you try alternating between the two? And I think you'll be much better off. So
That's a good tip. All right,
yeah,
everybody listen to that. Alternate, get a ball, and you'll be better off.
yeah,
So this is working with your body, working with your physiology and how we are designed in our biomechanics. And you mentioned that, right? Working within your
yeah.
physiology. So what do you mean by that exactly? What are some tips to do that?
There are just over the years so many simple ways to work with our body and not against it. And I have some, different strategies and hacks that I teach those that I work with, but sometimes it seems so simple and so it can create so much ease in our life
Mhm.
and body from this state of cortisol, go, 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 which is like fat storage. It's almost impossible sometimes to build muscle, to lose body fat. And when we're just trying so hard, especially working with runners and those who are really into health and fitness, sometimes we really have to just have those moments where we can chill out.
Mhm.
So recognizing this state of stress and then having the strategies in place, whether it is sleep, whether you're struggling with just anxiety and these stressful moments, a really high stress job. So one example strategy that I use is just to call it shifting your mind. And you just take one deep breath, think of one thing you're grateful for, and then think of how you want to show up in the world today. So it's I am, and you think, for a lot of times I'll like start my day like that. And I'll just say, I am joy filled as I make breakfast for my kids. And then I go and I am that person, right? I just step into that joy, and I think about what I'm grateful for. And it's amazing what gratitude can do in terms of hormones and just shifting that high stress state. So I just have individuals work with that strategy, just one breath. You don't have to do some crazy long meditation, just one breath. If you feel like things are, the train's going off the tracks at work, one breath. Think of one thing you're grateful for.
I
Shift
really like that.
yourself.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Positive visualization, but people who listen to me know I'm very direct. I'm not into a lot of spiritual things, but I do appreciate the link between the mind and body and what you're talking about. If I'm going to go to a speech, in front of a big audience, for example, thinking that it's going to go well seems to relieve the stress and get you prepared for the moment. So what you're saying makes a lot of sense. When do you advise people journal, or how would people identify these moments? Because I could see some people doing this just all day because the stress is always there.
Yeah, I think that, I say what we do and what we say to ourselves when it gets hard matters. And this exercise of defining what your hard is. What is hard in your life right now? Is it a relationship struggle? Is it you lost your job? Is it, during the pandemic, it was the pandemic, the stress of the pandemic, the unknown. Is it a health challenge? Is it you're struggling with weight gain and you don't know why? It's just,
Excellent.
it's so individual, but what is your heart, and starting to identify like what's triggering it. And
Got it. Yeah. And looking back in your week, perhaps, and saying this was the thing that came up the most that caused the stress, and maybe I should focus on some of these practices for myself. All right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it really
Yeah.
shifts where we start to intervene in our health and fitness, right? A lot of times we're like, okay, supplements, we're looking at the latest and
Mhm.
greatest fitness. When if we just kind of went upstream a little bit and looked at like
Mhm.
the stress, we could simplify things just a little bit.
But Louise, isn't there a supplement you can take for stress?
Oh, there's like 50 of them. It's
I'm sure
oh
there
my
are. The
goodness.
biggest pain points have the most supplements for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess that leads to a corollary to that, which is people do try to maybe do too much or focus on the wrong things and fall into different pitfalls, different traps along the way. We already covered some of them, like taking on too much, filling up your backpack with things that don't matter. So what are some of the mistakes you've seen clients make? And I'm really intrigued to know about some of the like professional athletes you've worked with, maybe the NFL. Really interested in hearing about that.
Yeah. So I think they're the worst culprits of doing everything they possibly can to get that cutting edge. So I think that's where I started to realize that there's so many different solutions for everything. And I would have athletes that were, sleep baric chambers, they were getting cryotherapy, they had a personal stretch person. I would work with them for massage therapy. They had performance coaches, nutritionists. It was just so much. And so I'd take a step back and kind of observe and see, okay, so what are they doing? And what does the science say? And so it was really interesting to start to see like, okay, so what is the minimum effort needed to achieve that maximum result? And that's kind of the lens that I try and encourage those that I work with to start to think about. Um, for example, if you're looking for energy boosts of cryotherapy, well, did you know that you can just spray cold water on your forehead and chest in your shower to get that same mitochondrial die-off that you're looking for in
Mhm.
cryotherapy, that energy boost? It's just starting to look at some of these things we're investing in and spending a lot of time on. Um, it's really interesting. There's a lot of different ways, like I said, that you can just work with the physiology of your body once we understand what it is.
Yeah, and I think that awareness is maybe a big first step a lot of people haven't taken yet before you even get into application. And what you hit on there is the minimum effective dose. I don't know if it's a phrase
Yes,
we use.
yeah.
That again, consistent with the theme earlier you mentioned of priorities. Of you've got all these things, but 9 out of 10 of them aren't going to get you very far until you focus on the 10th, or vice versa. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I could use an example too of an
Sure.
NFL player that came to me who was looking for just general overall health. He was taking hard hits on the field, and we started him on bone broth, just a great whole food source of collagen, all sorts of nutrition, amino acids. So then he keeps coming to me with all of these different things. Like, my friend says I should take this. My friend said I should take this. Is this good? Should I take this? So one of them was a collagen powder. So I explained to him the benefits of collagen are in this whole food source of bone broth that you're
Bone
already
broth.
taking
Mhm.
daily on top of an adequate protein diet. Do I think this supplement that your friend thinks is great is necessary? No. So it's just like the education piece of, again, we're duplicating effort in so many
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah. I was just listening to a podcast. They talked about some supplement that shuttles more carbs to your muscles or something. And it was like a 0.0001% increase versus just taking, eating enough carbs. You know what
Oh
I
my
mean?
gosh, I know,
Right.
I know.
You hear that stuff all the time. Yeah. So I'm sure you have a lot of other interesting stories regarding athletes. What did you do with the NFL population?
So I was primarily sports medical massage therapy. This
Okay.
was years ago. I was working on my strength and conditioning specialist certification at the time. I worked with the sports med staff on the team with the sports med docs and in the training room with their strength and conditioning staff. So it was more of looking at the overall total athlete health and and I was specifically more on like the injury treatment and prevention side.
Okay, and now I would say you probably work a lot with women, right? Women, you said
Mhm.
particularly 35 and over, wiser women, 35 and over, and they have to consider their health and fitness, and there's some unique considerations for them. So maybe let's dig into a little bit on that.
Yeah, this need for vibrant health and health, energy, and hormonal health in particular. A lot of us are, maybe in our 20s we could skimp on sleep. Maybe in our 20s we could run a super hard marathon training plan and we didn't feel repercussions. But now we have to be really strategic about what we're eating, when we're eating it, ensuring our hormonal health is in place first and foremost. We're not draining it, and just ensuring that we have to be more strategic. And women over 35, our hormones really start to shift. Our body takes longer to recover, and there's a lot of different things we need to do.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask exactly why, so people understand why these things happen and at what ages, right? Because when you say 35, to me, that's still it's still menopausal. It's not postmenopausal yet, which then other things occur.
Yeah.
Is it primarily down to hormones, and are there specifics about that people should be aware of?
Yeah, I think the biggest one and the misunderstanding that I've seen with the latest research coming out is just around carbs and how essential they are for female hormonal health, and then not training fasted. We
Hmm.
do need carbs, but we have to be strategic with them because, yes, our body does not process them as easily, but just eating them around breakfast, around training, around lunch is really key times when we actually need those carbs to build hormones. And without it, we start to cortisol. We build cortisol instead. We store fat.
Hmm.
It's super frustrating. You could eat barely nothing and you're still probably going to gain belly fat. It's just insane what it does to the hormones. So we need to ensure that that foundation's in place and not training fasted, because again, it's going to do the same thing. Cortisol is just going to spike and it steals from the hormones that, oh, hey, by the way, we're losing as a byproduct of perimenopause too. So
Yeah, those are all great insights. I want to dig in on some of those because they're very interesting. One having to do with meal timing with carbs, and the other with cortisol. So maybe starting with cortisol, we know there's a timing window between cortisol, melatonin, serotonin, all these things. Maybe just simplify, break it down, and help us understand why carbs are important in terms of fasted training and cortisol.
yeah, because when we go into a training session fasted, especially in the morning there, our cortisol is going to spike. And in order for our body to make that cortisol, my understanding is that it's going to steal from our progesterones and our estrogens.
Mhm.
And that's those we actually need to have energy and vibrant well-being. And we need those to recover and just most of our major energy cycles and ability to achieve our health and fitness and performance goals, we need our hormones. So with that, we definitely want to avoid the fasted training. And that's a really hard shift for a lot of women that I work with,
Hmm.
because there's a lot of that fasting is the answer.
Hmm.
And in certain circumstances, it is. Like when I had my stomach pre-cancer, you better bet I fasted because I was going
Hmm.
to starve those cancer cells. That's
Hmm.
part of shifting that terrain in my body to be anti-cancer. So there was a time and a place for it. For those that have like neurological issues, yes, fasting has a place. Maybe every once in a while you do something like you have a favorite detox with your functional medicine doctor. Okay, there might be a place for it. But to go into your training fasted every single day, I try to like meet people where they're at. But once they change this, or even it's just getting like aminos or a little bit of applesauce, half a banana, it doesn't have to be
Hmm.
anything big. Get something into your body, shift that biochemical pathway from that state of stress to one that can, hey, support your health and performance. It's a game changer.
I really like that because we talk a lot about blood glucose control, blood sugar control, and just glycolytic energy from carbs. And you're touching on the hormonal implication and the stressor related to cortisol and carbs. And it sounds like it's mainly for morning training, because if you're training later in the day, you've probably eaten something before that point. Would you say that a large, fairly high carb dinner somewhat compensates for that, even if you didn't eat in the morning, or not?
I wouldn't know. And
Yeah.
especially for women too. I mean, just getting a source of protein in the evening to enhance that repair and recovery sometimes is very beneficial depending on their training volume.
Hmm.
If they're a marathon runner and they're going into a long run, absolutely get some great nutrient dense carbs. The quality of your carbs matters.
Hmm.
Um, but otherwise, I tend to encourage just a typically based on the average person's dinner, which is a lot of like pasta. It's
Yes.
just looking at adding those veggies, adding some really great sources of protein and fat. And yes, you can have some carbs, but it's just not the heart of your meal,
Mhm.
your meal
Yeah.
at that point.
Sure. Okay. And then the banana in the morning or something. I'm all for that. I do a banana and protein shake before my training in the morning as well. I get it. Um, and then what was the other thing? The timing throughout the day for carbs. You touched on that a little bit earlier. Can you go into that?
Yeah. So having good carbs post workout, for women who are 35 and over, looking at like a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 ratio
Yeah.
carbs to protein is great. 3-to-1 starts to get a little tricky. We see some insulin impact there, some energy that is going to possibly crash based on a really high carb meal, because, looking at that athlete or that fitness lover's intra and pre-workout meals, we might want to see up to 40 grams of carbs in that
Mhm.
post-workout meal, or I'm sorry, 40 grams of protein. So that protein is the heart of that meal,
Mhm.
pairing it with your carbs, of course. So like I said, it's going to be either 2-to-1 or
1 to 1, 2
1-to-1
to 1.
ratio. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's
three
pretty
to one
consistent.
is, it
Yeah.
gets hard. Maybe if you're an ultra marathoner,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
might
I mean,
see
if you're
that
like
then.
2 hour training sessions, CrossFit or something, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, cool. No, I could dig into this stuff all day. I tend to get in the weeds on this, but it's very interesting. I like for people to hear these things, because I think there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of conventional wisdom around what and when you should eat, right? Um,
Yeah. And it's so
yeah.
individual. Let me just
Yes.
say that
True.
I had to do like a whole training module in my Badass Breakthrough Academy on like how we like what are your health goals? Do you have health challenges? What's your energy like? Do you have underlying conditions? Do you have how long you're training for? What type of training are you
Mhm.
doing? It all matters. So
Yes.
just using that lens and those blinders, put the blinders on, listeners, where you can, and focus on your goals,
You
and what
as
your
an
body's
individual.
needs.
Yes, for sure. And feel free to experiment, right? Nothing set in
Hmm.
stone. Try something for a week, try something, for a few weeks and switch it up. Um, Very cool. So we talked about women. The one other thing comes to mind. I was thinking of a client who is postmenopause and dealing with the weight gain that sometimes comes from that, just indiscriminate, quote unquote, unexplainable weight gain, right? We all think we know what the science says about why you gain and lose weight, but then there's all these other factors that women face with hormones, and then it seems to present as visceral or abdominal fat as well. What do we know about that, and is there anything what do we have to change at that point, to deal with that?
Yeah. So that would definitely, I'd be looking to see like carbohydrate timing. I would be looking to ensure she's getting enough protein. I would look to alcohol use, just because alcohol could really seems to push out that
Visceral
abdominal
fat.
fat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and different strategies. If you are, because of course, I enjoy alcohol, so I just
Yeah. Sure.
encourage the different hacks to help to like prevent that,
Limit it.
super
Yeah.
super acidic shift in your body. Um, and then I would also look to if she had like a good quality multivitamin, because believe it or not, there's a couple foundational supplements that I find are just game changers for especially this age group of women, myself included, is just a really high quality multivitamin.
Okay.
And the reason why being that when we have that blanket of really high quality nutrition, it can cover the gaps, right? Potentially, we don't have to worry about all the complicated lab testing. Of course, that's
Hmm.
beneficial too. But if we don't have access to that, sometimes just, making sure you're getting really great methylated B12, making sure you have a really high quality magnesium, you're getting enough vitamin D. And then the other one is a high quality omega. And those two, you'd be amazed. I've had menopausal women that have had that stubborn 5 pounds and they're just like, oh my gosh, it's gone. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
we changed a couple
It's the
things, but
fish oil pills,
yeah,
really, seriously, or the magnesium. You're right.
yeah, it's just like something is
Very
deficient.
important
So
supplements. Yeah.
that biological pathway to burn that fat and to see the gains of your fitness, it just couldn't run. It just
Right.
needed some sort of precursor, which we don't know what it was, but maybe it was magnesium, maybe it was vitamin D.
Yeah, I like that thought of kind of if you think of all your vitamins filling up little buckets, and then a few of them are empty, and you're just kind of passing water over the entire thing and hoping to fill up the right buckets. Yeah. So what was I going to mention about magnesium? Magnesium, fish oil, and multivitamins. What you mentioned. What about and then you said B12, creatine. What do you think of creatine?
So honestly, it's one of the best studied supplements of all time, and I've personally used it. Um, I If an individual wants to try it, there is a time and a place sometimes. I
Hmm.
mean, it is one of them that is the most research backed. So from like a sports
Yep.
scientist perspective, yeah,
Cool.
if you
All
want to
right.
try
Yeah.
it.
Good for performance. Okay. So I want to get into a little bit more of about body composition, right? Because we had a little conversation by email about running, and you're big into running. I
Mm.
want to get into that topic with you. I used to love running and kind of stopped altogether at some point. Don't do it much anymore, but I get why a lot of people love doing it, both for enjoyment and for competition and other reasons. And I even just worked with a person training for a half marathon. So, um, some people would say then that I'm against cardio, right? I'm against cardio because we focus a lot on strength, lifting, muscle mass, and there's the whole interference effect with cardio. But I don't believe. I think it's a little bit overblown. I think if you enjoy it and keep the volume reasonable, you can make it all work. But I want to hear your take on that because I know you're a competitive runner, and you did that after the health diagnoses. I know you work with others and empower them to do that. So tell me about your love for running. Tell me about the benefits, everything about running.
Oh, so you definitely hit a nail on the head though. Running, especially at this women over 35 population, my goodness, it is the one of the worst forms of exercises for our bodies.
There you go. I'll
And
let you say it.
and no, it really is. And the reason why is because it is stress. Stress is stress, whether it's exercise, the good stress, or the bad stress of, a high stress work week, life. But there is a stress tipping point. And when we are go, go, go all the time, and we add just 6 days of running on top of it, it is so much for our body. And I saw a lot of health consequences from the fact, yes, I had underlying conditions, but then I was running so much too. So the more I dug into it, the more I shifted to the simple less is more type of training. It was a big game changer for my health, for my hormones. Like everything started to reverse. And so it is a little hard for those who want to train very religiously 6 days a week. But if we add just some little bit of strength training in there, they're injury free, they're energized, they have
Mhm.
muscles that they love, and you know what? They're stronger runners and they're not tired all the time. And just there is a place. There is a place for running, of course. I love it. But sometimes for my body, I know ultra marathons, not so great anymore. I tend to shy away from the marathon even anymore, maybe one a year. And for other women, it's just sort of looking at their physiology. Where are they at in their stress in their life and their age too?
So tell us about that experience with a woman who's been into running, runs every day, and you're so correct. I think it might have started in the 70s. If you look at the history of exercise and running, all of a sudden there was one pivotal book, I don't remember the title, um, The Running Revolution or something like that, and it set off everything. That along with the Nautilus machines that you see at Planet Fitness,
Yeah.
for the modern gym and the modern culture. Somebody who runs a lot, and then you get them to change their mindset and start incorporating lifting. What does that evolution look like for a lot of women?
It's sometimes a little challenging. I find there's a lot of fear around strength training, just not
Mm,
knowing. And so that's where we work and we keep it simple. It's amazing how women can do dynamic lifting. And by that, I mean, you can take a weight from off the floor, kick it up over your shoulder and over your head, and you feel powerful. You see incredible results. You have
mhm,
energy after doing it, and you're not going to break your back. You're not going to get super big muscles. Oh, by the way, your running's going to get stronger and you're going to see like great physique changes.
mhm,
So sometimes it takes time. But you know what? I swear it's just only a few weeks for most of them. They're
mhm,
like, my husband's commenting about my
mhm,
muscles, and I'm like, they
mhm.
can see the changes in my body, and my clothes are fitting great, and oh my gosh, I have energy when I'm training. And we switch up the workouts. They might have been running like slow and steady for 6 days a week, and we'll just add in a little bit of speed work to get
Okay.
that like awesome like hit effect. It's like you don't have to go
Mhm.
to the hit class, you don't have to
Yeah.
overdo it, but let's just add in like 30-second intervals
Mhm.
and at the end of your run. Oh, wait, by the way, you feel like you're in college again running track. It's just the most amazing, empowered feeling. And women at any age can do it.
Yeah, yeah, that's incredible. That and within a few weeks they start to notice. Do some of them then they want to branch off and really get into it? With I don't know powerlifting or barbell work or any of that kind of
Um,
strength work.
no, so I would just say that they're just more open to things like a clean and press,
Yeah, yeah.
For some of them, I haven't seen anyone turn to powerlifting, but more so just realizing the value of how
Hmm.
great lifting makes them feel, but also to injury prevention.
Hmm.
Um, Doing some targeted running specific exercises are amazing in just not having like that sciatica type pain. Your hips
Hmm.
aren't always out of alignment. You don't have low back pain. Your calf isn't always getting tight. Like all of these things start to shift towards, oh, I don't have the aches and pains. I have more energy. It's like a very beautiful place to be.
Yeah, that is so true. Even if you're listening, even if you're 60, 65 years old and never trained before, and I've seen it happen, you start training, all of a sudden the pain start to go away, right?
Oh,
I
it's
have back
amazing.
pain, I start deadlifting or any hip hinge movements really. Same thing, knee pain, start squatting. It's incredible. So what about when we talk about body composition? I'm sure a lot of your clients do have a fat loss goal, right? They're trying to actually go into a cut or fat loss phase at some point, which is going to require caloric restriction. Now you're going to have other stressors on the body. So where does running fit in there, if it does at all? And I ask that because a lot of people think or used to think running is the way you burn more calories, and that's how I'm going to accelerate my diet. Let's dispel that myth, please.
Yes. So that's the thing. I'll be looking at an individual's, running agenda and then looking at the fact like, oh, they do want to also lose weight. So for an individual, I might discourage the marathon and say,
Mhm.
okay, let's work with the half. The half marathon
Yeah.
seems to be a sweet spot where we can still do those longer runs that you enjoy. But if you really want a targeted weight loss phase, I discourage it typically in marathon training because,
Mhm.
again, I don't want you losing bone mass. I don't want you burning out. I don't want you feeling like junk every time you go out to run. And that is the reality of weight loss and marathon training for most. Now,
Okay.
if you're morbidly obese and you're starting a marathon training cycle, it might be a sweet spot, right? You might see weight loss. You're going to be in a
You
caloric
have some
deficit.
reserves to work from. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
context matters, but looking at more of those shorter races, maybe off cycling from the half marathon and doing the 5K. Now that's a place where we can lose some fat, You can maintain your running volume. You'll get faster for your next marathon. And maybe it's 3 or 4 months where you kind of off cycle, but hey, that's great for injury prevention and you look great at the end and you're faster, you know?
I like that. Yeah, so it's almost like an off season on the running to be on season on the fat loss, and then you cycle through the other way. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I mean, that
And
probably, yeah.
yeah, just setting expectations otherwise that this might be challenging and we're not going to pull calories from around your training. That's the number one mistake I see, I think, is like, I'm just not going to eat as much after my run. It's like, no, let's maybe pull from dinner,
Got it.
which is really hard for most because we want to eat at dinner.
Yeah, for sure. So with the running, are you actually helping competitive runners prepare for their events then? Is that a big part of what you do?
So I wouldn't say that I work with a lot of like super competitive, like sponsored runners. I've had an ultra runner who won a 100-mile race. She was awesome. We worked a lot on like mindset type stuff. Being that I can work on a lot of different aspects of health and fitness. I'm trying to think if I've had a more around mindset, honestly, for more of like the competitive side. Otherwise, it's pretty recreational. But yes, they have agendas to Boston qualify. They have time goals. They might want to get a 127. They might want to get a 259. Like there's these obscure times that we all as runners absolutely have to achieve. So
yeah, I wouldn't know because I've never been competitive. But yes, I hear what you're saying.
yeah.
So let's take an everyday person, I guess, who wants to just be competitive with themselves, right? And they want to get faster, and they're doing races fairly regularly, a couple times a year. What's the best tip you have for them in terms of I don't know if it's the strength to weight ratio or how would they get faster?
I think the type of training runs that you do are essential,
Okay.
but I see it overcomplicated. And from a physiological standpoint, you truly need your aerobic base, which are your easy runs. You need, and that includes like your long run too. So that's just going to keep that aerobic system going well. Recommend 2 speed type workouts. One might be more like a track based. You might do some 800 repeats, do whatever distance you love. Maybe you love 400s, maybe you love mile repeats. And then having what I call a tempo, which is actually your race pace. Most people don't call tempo race pace, but I love to help the runner achieve that feeling of like, I have been here. I've done that. This is my race pace. I know what it feels like. I know what to expect. My body is so incredibly capable. I practice it every week in my training block. And that is a really great place from a physiological standpoint and a mental standpoint.
Yeah, see, it's like the theory of specificity, right? Like if you're gonna go to a powerlifting meet, you got to practice the lifts. So if you're gonna run, you're gonna practice at that pace. I mean, it makes sense intuitively, at least to me.
Yeah.
And then for lifting to support running. So let's say your primary goal is the running and the racing. What does the lifting look like for that type of person?
I would definitely recommend at least 2 days per week.
Okay.
And I have a very specific like strength and conditioning type exercises that I recommend. One is a single-sided kettlebell clean and press. I think that is one of the absolute best running exercises you can do. And that's because we never do anything when we're running on 2 feet. It's always single-legged.
Yeah.
So
okay, so unilateral movements. Is it a power clean and press or a full clean and press?
So I just kettlebell from the floor.
Yeah.
The clean and press full. Yeah. That and just deadlifts, anything working posterior chain, really strong glutes because we're so quad dominant. So I see.
And tell the ladies what's the best exercise for glutes.
So honestly, I just want to make sure they're activated and firing in the first place. And so I have them just do like little donkey kicks when they're standing as their dynamic warm up throughout the day, just to like know what that feels like to have a powerful kickback. But I mean, we might do like with for some very simple, just like a bridge with some weight and from off the floor. So we're doing some hip extension or kettlebell swings is a really great one.
Sure. Yeah, it's great.
For power in running extension. So.
Yeah, and the kickbacks, I guess. Yeah, you're right. I mean, running is a power sport, a speed and power sport, so that's great. All right, is there anything else you want to share?
I don't think so. I just think that if there are any listeners who are in that discouraging or dark place, to know that you got this, and there is always light. It's just having the strategies and the tools to know how to find it. And if you don't, that's where assembling your army of support is going to be your greatest resource, whether that's a coach, whether that's a loved one, whether that's healthcare providers. So get your army in place and small steps. You'll get there.
Small steps, and Louise can help you get there for sure. So Louise, remind us again where listeners can learn more about you and your work.
Absolutely. So I have breakingthroughwellness.com as your one-stop shop. I have my blog there that talks everything about fighting disease, general physical activity, running, wellness, and I offer my Badass Breakthrough Academy for women 35 and over. And I do a variety of coaching from youth athletes all the way through pro. So you can find all of events, resources, courses, and that Badass Breakthrough Academy at breakingthroughwellness.com.
breakingthroughwellness.com. I'll include all those links in the show notes for the listeners. And Louise, thank you again for coming on the show. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here.